In this video, I'm gonna help you hear everything in your studio better with a simple, free monitor speaker hack that you can set up in less than 5 minutes. In particular, this is gonna be really helpful for you if you've been struggling to get the bass right in your mix, and if you've been finding that you've been having trouble getting your mixes to translate to other playback environments. That's our game plan. Let's go. So this hack has to do with equal loudness contours. And usually when those get brought up, a super nerdy discussion ensues, but I'm gonna keep it really, really chill for everybody today. We're just gonna talk about the basics. All that the equal loudness contours say through the research is that our human ears, our auditory system, will perceive a really different frequency balance depending on the sound pressure level, the volume that we're listening at. And this has huge implications for mixing bass. So if you're monitoring, listening really loud, then the human ear, your system, is gonna hear way more bass than there actually is. And as a producer or engineer, you're going to undermix it. So you're gonna put in less bass because you're hearing too much. And then when you take your song somewhere else, it's gonna sound thin and wimpy and weak, and you're gonna be like, what happened with the bass? It sounded so good in my studio. Then on the other side of that equation is if you're monitoring too low, then you're not going to hear enough bass, and you're gonna push it up as a mixer or as a producer. And then when you take it somewhere else, it's gonna be swamped. It'll sound muddy, it'll sound completely out of whack when you listen to it on another playback system. So there's this Goldilocks zone, this sweet spot in the middle, and we're gonna find it. We're gonna need a couple things to run the tests. The first thing you need is some way of measuring sound pressure level. It can be as simple as just going to the App Store and grabbing a free app and using your phone. If you do that, make sure that it has two key features. It has to have a C-weighted scale. The other one that's common to see is A-weighting. Don't use that, so make sure it's C-weighted. And then the other thing is it has to be able to have an averaging mode, okay? If it's just reading momentary peaks or spikes, you're not really gonna be able to catch those readings. You need an averaging mode. For me, I use a hardware one. I just got this off Amazon. It is an X-Tech 407730, and it has both C-weighting and averaging, and I can also attach it via the threading to a mic stand, which is handy. And the second thing you're gonna need are calibrated pink noise files. So I have popped a free download below this video. There's a link, grab it. You'll download 2 files in that package. One of them is a calibrated -20 RMS file, and the other one is a calibrated -14 RMS file. Why do we have those? What are they for? The -20 file is what you're gonna use if you typically work on highly dynamic music, like if you're scoring films, doing stuff for theaters, if you're doing orchestral music, jazz, some folk and acoustic stuff. And why 20 dB? Well, that is the typical range that you might be in for crest factor, which is just the difference between where your peaks are hitting and the average RMS level. Now, if you're working on more compressed, louder, modern genres, like maybe hip hop, electronic music, pop, things like that, even some modern folk, definitely country, it's more compressed, right? Less dynamic range. That's what the -14 RMS file is for. Grab those, load those up in your DAW, set them to loop, and then let's go to the next step. The first step in the process is to make sure there isn't a big level difference between your left and your right speaker. If you have a sub or subs, turn them on. We're going to use them in these measurements. So I want you to start by going around behind your speakers and taking a look at their output volume knob and visually match the left and the right as closely as possible. Then pop back out, and we're going to use our pink noise file that you've chosen. You're going to play that out of your DAW, and you are going to use your sound pressure level meter at exactly where your ears would be in your mix position, okay? So ears are usually 47 inches off the ground when you're seated in a music studio, and you're gonna, if you have a meter like this, you're gonna point this straight up, and you're gonna hold it right over your mix position. And you're gonna take a look at the volume that comes out of the left speaker, so one speaker at a time, and the right speaker, and if there's any discrepancy between them, you're gonna fine tune them with the volume levels, the output levels on the back of the speaker. Okay, do that, and then let's move on. Now we're ready for the main calibration. So you're going to play your selected pink noise file out of your DAW, and it's going to be looped, so you can play it as long as you need to take your readings. Your sound pressure level meter, you're either going to hold it or have it on a stand at ear height at exactly your mix position, and you're going to be using both speakers and a sub or subs if you have them. And you're going to turn your audio interface or your monitor controller up or down until the reading stabilizes at 65 dB SPL. Why have I chosen that number to target? Well, level-wise, that's about what you could have a comfortable conversation with somebody next to you over. You're not straining, it's not drowning you out. It's also gonna vary based on room. So if you're in a much smaller room than I'm in, like a bedroom, then that level should be lower. If you're in a larger room than I am, and you're in I'm in a medium-sized control room that's maybe 15 feet wide by 20-something feet deep. If you're in a larger room than that, then you could go louder. But that's the number for me with the music that I work on at the loudness levels that I master at, that results in a music volume of about 75 to 80 dB SPL. And that's a comfortable level that I can mix at for a long period of time without ear fatigue and without hearing damage, where the bass is balanced and I'm in that sweet spot with the equal loudness contours. That's the theory. And there's room for flexibility in that. Like I said, if you're in a smaller room, if you're in a bigger room, if you work on music that's more or less dynamic than the stuff that I'm working on, then that can vary. But start with that level, the level you can have a conversation over, 65 dB SPL on the meter at your mix position. Check that out, and then come back and let's continue. Sweet. So you've got your Goldilocks zone all dialed in and your audio interface is set to the exact right number. Now what do? Do you write it on a Post-it note and just turn it to that every time you come into your studio? I mean, that's the low-tech way. But I like repeatable systems, and when you're doing this day in and day out, you just want it to work, right? So most modern audio interfaces come with some type of software control app that interfaces with them, and most of them have presets or templates or snapshots. And I'd like to suggest that you use that so that you always have this recallable state for your interface and you know exactly what the output level is. So I'm using an RME Fireface UFX3, and it comes with a beautiful software app that's hyper advanced. One of the things that it allows me to do is to create mixer snapshots. And so what I've done is, after I set my levels, I went into Total Mix and I saved a snapshot for this particular calibrated monitor setting. I like to have hands-on control, so I'm using their USB monitor controller, which is called the ARC USB. And on that monitor controller, it has buttons for all kinds of different snapshots. Now, I did have to make one settings change. So anybody who is a Total Mix user, an RME user, you have to go into the settings, and by default, it's set not to recall the mains out. So you have to uncheck that and say, don't exclude the mains out, calibrate the mains out as well. So I had to make that settings change. Once I did that, I was all good to go. So that's what I would recommend doing. Whatever audio interface you guys are using, see if it has a preset or snapshot or template function, name it calibrated monitoring, and use that, recall it, and make sure that you're using that in each one of your sessions. Once you know the process, you can definitely do that within 5 minutes or less on any monitoring system that you need to work on. Now, I know many of you might be asking yourself, well, hey, what about the advice that I've heard to monitor louder and quieter for periods of time? Is that something that we should be doing? 100%. Absolutely. So now I'll take a couple minutes and explain how you can take this further to accommodate additional monitoring levels. I'm 100% in the camp that I think that there's value in, for brief periods of time, monitoring louder or much louder, and also monitoring more quietly. So what I did is I took my main snapshot, which was 65 dB, and then I created a boost 1 and boost 2 that got louder. So boost 1 was at 72 dB SPL. Boost 2 was at 78 dB SPL. And that results in music that gets up into the low 90s in sound pressure level. And that's mega loud, right? So I use that when I want to simulate what that might sound like more on a larger system, a club system, something like that. I don't monitor very long at that loudness level. And it's the loudness level where other people usually want to leave the room. Okay, so very briefly at those loudness levels. So then I have below my main, I have quiet 1, which is a bit quieter, and quiet 2, which is a lot quieter. Quiet 1 is 60 dB SPL. Quiet 2 is 53. 53 is kind of at the, it's down near the barely audible range. And it kind of simulates, I watched a great Andy Wallace interview, the mixer Andy Wallace, huge inspiration, was interviewed by Rick Beato recently. And Andy said he likes to mix really, really low, and he kind of pictures like a ghetto blaster on the beach falling over and you can barely hear it. He wants the song to sound good there at that volume level too. Those are my 5 snapshots, and you might want to use different numbers for yourself. Like I said, it's highly flexible and customizable. The main thing that I do with those that I love is I'm using the hands-on control of the RME Arc USB to be able to do that. I'm not having to click and load snapshots manually in my interface software in Total Mix, right? I just click a button and it's instantaneous at those different levels, so I can click through those really, really, really fast. And that's absolutely huge to be able to do that. The other thing that I'll say, just to kind of close things through, bring things home, is that you need some time for your ears to adapt to this. If you're one of the people like I used to be that was always riding the volume and turning it up and down on the interface, you're probably experiencing some of these downsides. Your mixes aren't translating. Maybe you're getting ear fatigue much more quickly than you need to. Maybe you're even getting some mild hearing damage. I would really suggest just, sitting on your hands, you will adjust, you will acclimate to this level, and you'll begin to experience the benefits of being able to mix longer sessions, keep hearing damage off in the distance, and also to be able to hear just how things are supposed to sound and hit at that level when everything that you're working on is kind of at that same level. You just get to know it, you learn it, which is a huge advantage for you as a producer or engineer. All right, that's a wrap on this one. I wanted to give a big shout out to RME, our sponsor on this video, for making this happen. And if you want to check out their interfaces, and in particular their Total Mix platform that I use to be able to manage all of these snapshots for my monitoring levels, I'll drop a link below in the video description. Please drop me a comment, let me know what you thought about this one. If you have any questions, make sure you grab those pink noise files as well. And I hope you feel inspired to level up your monitoring. This one is a really simple, low-hanging fruit. It's an absolute pro best practice that I got from Grammy-winning engineers. And I hope that you're able to implement it and improve your monitoring and your mix and mastering results. All right, I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye for now. Cheers.